Let's bring in now House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan. Republicans on his committee released a report earlier this month that says the Biden-Harris administration's border policies ensured the release of Laken Riley's accused murderer into the U.S. back in 2022. Mr. Chairman, thanks so much for taking time with us today. Before we get into your committee's Before we get into your committee's report, sir, I want to ask you about the accusations coming from your Republican colleagues who say Vice President Harris is really flip-flopping on the issue of a border wall. She was obviously an outspoken critic of the former president's efforts to get one up and running, but then we heard her last week say at the DNC she actually supports resurrecting the ill-fated bipartisan, border bill, which mandates hundreds of millions of dollars to pick up construction. I don't know, are you jumping for joy to hear that?
Well, I mean, let's hope that's what she's for. What I do know is on day one of this administration, where she was the border czar of, day one, they said no more building the wall, no more remain in Mexico, and if you get here, we won't detain you, we'll release you. And they released Mr. Ibarra, by the way, the terrible guy who did the terrible things to Laken Riley, killed Laken Riley, took her life. They released him when they had space to detain him, when they knew he had a criminal record and he had relatives in a gang, and yet they released this guy and he kills and takes Laken Riley from us all. So I don't know. What I do know is the Biden-Harris administration, in 4 years' time, we went from a secure border to no border, and the Democrat Party just made the border czar their nominee. What I do know is it went from safe streets to record crime. The Democrat Party made the individual who said, let's bail out the rioters of 2020. They just made her their nominee. What I do know is we went from $2 gas to $4 gas, and they just made the person who said, I'm against fracking, their nominee. And what I know is we went from stable prices to record inflation, and they just took the tie-breaking vote to Kamala Harris for the Inflation Reduction Act, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which actually increased inflation. They just made her their nominee. So we're quickly getting up. There was a sports analogy earlier. We're quickly getting where we're going to get past the pep rally that she's been in for the last 38, 40 days, whatever it's been, to where we actually play. Everything's wonderful in the pep rally. It's all kicks and giggles. But then you get to the game and you get to the facts and the issues. That's where I think President Trump and J.D. Vance are going to move strongly in the lead.
So I want to ask you about this. In 2022, DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said under oath during congressional testimony that the federal government was absolutely not involved in pressuring social media to sort of censor or deprioritize any content related to COVID. Take a quick listen.
We have example after example of this administration coordinated, apparently, according to a federal court, by your agency, pressuring, coercing social media companies to engage in censorship. Is that constitutional?
That is unequivocally false.
Is what the emails show.
It is unequivocally false, Senator.
So in light of the recent revelations this week from Mark Zuckerberg, who said that he actually and his entire company did feel tremendous pressure and they regret succumbing to it, what do you make of these comments? Do you think the Judiciary Committee may take up this matter?
Well, we've been working on this for a year and a half. We got the letter, I think, because we deposed 12 people from Facebook, all the way from line-level people to Sir Nick Clegg, the #3 guy at Meta. So I think what Mr. Zuckerberg admitted in the letter to us was he said, one, the Biden-Harris administration did pressure big tech to censor, Facebook to censor. Two, they did, in fact, censor. Three, they throttled back the Hunter Biden laptop story. And four, he's no longer going to be doing this Zuckerbucks out there, key cities, key boards of elections around the country. Thank goodness for that. So I think 4 key takeaways. Yeah, there was censorship. Big government was pressuring big tech to censor Americans, and it was predominantly conservatives. And Mayorkas to say that is just absolutely... Remember, this is the same guy this is the agency who was trying to set up the Disinformation Governance Board, as if some bureaucrats can tell Americans what they can and say, what they can't say under the First Amendment. This is crazy. So, of course, he's wrong.
Never really got off the ground, thankfully. Mr. Chairman, thanks so much for taking time with us this afternoon. Great to talk to you.
You bet. Good to be with you.